Welcome into Locked On Phillies. The Phils lose to the Cubs in the opener in Chicago and the road trip to end the season, not starting off how the Phillies would have wanted. Can they right the ship? I'll tell you what I think on today's Locked On Phillies.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Been talking Phils baseball for years over on 97.5 The Fanatic on the radio. Happy to be here now with you as your host of Locked On Phillies. I want to thank you very much for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And the Philadelphia Phillies are in their final stretch of the year. They got 9 games remaining now, all of them on the road, the last 10 on the road for the Phillies. They played game number not 10, I guess it would be 152 last night. And it wasn't a great effort from the Phillies offensively. They lose 2-1 to the Cubs in Wrigley in a cold game against Marcus Stroman. And not cold them. They were cold on offense, but the weather was a little bit cold. Tom McCarthy and Ruben Amaro Jr., who called the game, were in their winter jackets before the game, long sleeves for all the players. It's not warm in Chicago right now. Don't expect it to be warm the next couple games. But that's September, October baseball, right? You're going to play in the cold. Do you remember thinking back, and this is way back, but the 2007 Phillies team that chased down the Mets and then had to go to Colorado to face a really good Rockies team? Yeah, well, they were they didn't have to go to Colorado. They had to at points because the way the series was set. Some of those games in Colorado were freezing. I mean, there's no Colorado this year you got to go to, but that's October baseball. That's late October baseball. Like, you might have to play places that it's a little bit cold. It's going to be cold up in New York if they go play the Mets. They'll have they won't necessarily have issues with that. I'm just saying weather can't be an excuse for this team at this point. The issue with this team right now, and I want to start with this because I got this text from a friend last night after the game. And she texted me and asked because she hadn't caught the game. I had told her what had happened, the final score and everything. She's like, what's wrong with this team right now? And it took me a second to think about what's wrong with this team following last night. And I don't think it's the starting pitching. Let me first start by commending Zach Wheeler. Zach Wheeler had maybe the most efficient start of his career last night that he's ever had. He was unbelievable. He got the Phillies in position to win. He only gave up 1 run on an opposite field home run that was aided by the wind. Now, the same wind knocked down a couple balls that were hit really hard to left and center, but still, it was he gave up 1 run. And frankly, even though Connor Brogdon gave up a run in relief, the Phillies only allowed 2 runs to a Cubs lineup that isn't that good. And that's fine. You should win games. When you play against this Chicago Cubs team and you hold them to 2 runs, you should win 99 out of 100 of those games. Yesterday, I guess, was either the 1 out of the 100 they lose, or the Philadelphia Phillies offense, I should say, isn't carrying this team the way that they need to. Here's the first issue, right? Your top guys need to play like their top guys in the playoff chase if you're going to make it in. You look at all the playoff teams, who's carrying them right now? Aaron Judge for the Yankees. Yordan Alvarez, who just had some type of a lower body injury for the Houston Astros, but he's carrying them. Ronald Acuna for the Braves. Francisco Lindor hitting big home runs for the New York Mets, and Pete Alonso as well. Like, the teams that are going in are the teams that are getting carried by their best players, or they're getting carried by some of their top players. The Phillies right now, Kyle Schwarber, he's only good when he hits home runs, and that seems to be less and less often as the season goes on. Rhys Hoskins will have a really hot game, and then he'll have a week where he does nothing. Alec Boehm has been more consistent than the other guys, but doesn't have the power numbers. Hasn't really had that stretch where he's exceptionally hot. The only guy at the top of the order, and Bryce Harper had a nice game last night. Maybe he's turning it on. Maybe he's flipping that switch last 10 games of like, okay, I need to be the best player in the world right now. Because last night he had a double and a single with the Phillies' only RBI. Great. You'll take that from him. That's a good day by Bryce Harper. But prior to this, and since he's returned from the injury, he hasn't been himself. He needs to be better. Gene Segura has been quiet down the stretch. Not bad, but quiet. One of these guys needs to get hot, or a couple of these guys need to get hot. Nick Castellanos just came back. He didn't have a great night last night, but it's his first game back from being on the injured list, and he had no minor league at-bats. I don't know who it's going to be. JT Realmuto has been incredible. He's been really, really, really good for this team. He's about the only guy at the top of the lineup that doesn't deserve a lot of the blame for what's happened over the past 2-3 weeks of the season. It's been guys at the bottom of the order, though. Nick Maton, Edmundo Sosa, Matt Vierling, Brandon Marsh, that have been helping this team to stay afloat with the Milwaukee Brewers trying to chase them down for the final wild card spot. That's not necessarily a bad thing that those are the guys contributing to help them win, because that means you're getting a lot from the bottom of your lineup that you didn't expect to get. But eventually, those guys are not guys that they'll carry you for a month's worth of games. And what you've seen over the past couple of weeks is that it's starting to come back to bite the Phillies. The other thing, besides that, the bullpen hasn't been as good as what we saw when the Phillies were going really well. Part of that's injuries. You missed Anthony Dominguez for a little bit of time. Brad Hand, no longer available. Corey Knebel, no longer available. The Phillies have had to go into the minors and call up some guys that are major league level pitchers, but not great major league level bullpen guys. Yesterday, there was a weird thing with a lot of guys not being available. I don't know if Rob Thompson has seen the injuries to his bullpen and is afraid of losing more guys for the season and thinks they can survive with having guys like Sir Anthony Dominguez unavailable and David Robertson unavailable, but it was coming off an off day. That doesn't make too much sense to me. The bullpen will have to be better because the starting pitching, frankly, hasn't been all that bad outside of, really, in the Toronto series, what Kyle Gibson did when he got absolutely shelled in the game that the Toronto Blue Jays hung 18 on the Phillies. The starting pitching has been good enough. The bottom of the lineup's been good enough. It's the top of the order. It's the bullpen. And the one other thing that scares me is it's the mentality of this team. They seem like a team that's crumbling under the pressure. Every once in a while, they'll run into a win because they're too good not to. But when they have games against teams that they should be beating or should be competing with or should be stealing more games from than what they do, they seem to be collapsing. Like they don't believe that they're a playoff caliber team. Like they don't believe they're capable of holding a September lead in a playoff race. Like they don't believe they're any different from the 2021 Phillies or the 2020 Phillies or the 2019 Phillies or all the teams in between now and 2011 when the team last made it in. And that is the most crippling thing. You look at this lineup. Gene Segura never played in the playoffs. JT Realmuto, no playoff experience. Rhys Hoskins, no playoff experience. Bryce Harper, minimal playoff experience. Aaron Nola, no playoff experience. Zach Wheeler, minimal playoff experience. I think one start in the playoffs for him. Brandon Marsh, no playoff experience. Matt Vierling, no playoff experience. Nick Maton, no playoff experience. Bryson Stott, Alec Boehm. There's so many guys on this team that have no idea what it takes to make it and no idea what to do once they get it. Now, maybe that means, and we talked about this on the John Kincaid show this morning on 97.5 The Fanatic on the radio, maybe that means they don't know what they don't know. And sometimes you see young teams burst on the scene and just take the league by storm when they get into the playoffs and get hot at the right time. But you got to get in first. And right now, this team's mentality, just the feeling that you get when you look at some of the at-bats and how they approach pitchers and approach games that they need to win, it honestly seems like either they're scared or they lack confidence. And that's a troubling thing, especially with the Milwaukee Brewers right behind them. Now, we'll discuss coming up where they're at in the MLB wild card standings in the National League. We'll also preview Game 2 of this series with the Chicago Cubs. We'll discuss all of that and see if they can turn it around. Just those are the things to answer that question that my friend had and to answer it for you, because I'm sure there's a lot of people thinking that out there, like what has gone wrong with this team. Those are the main things that I'm seeing that have gone wrong with the 2022 Philadelphia Phillies. But hey, 9 more games. They're in a playoff spot. Still a game and a half up on those Milwaukee Brewers. It's not too late for them to turn it around and get hot going in. I don't know, win 7 of the last 9. That would be awesome. We'll discuss if they can do it, at least starting with tonight. Coming up next on Locked On Phillies. All right, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business. Feels like you're at the poker table and you're going all in. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Listen, I got a LinkedIn profile. You got a LinkedIn profile. We all do. LinkedIn's so popular. Do you know how many people use LinkedIn? 810 million professionals is the estimated amount that's on LinkedIn. There's so many people that check it every day. And if you're on a job search, that's the one people are most comfortable with. It's like a social media. You don't want to go to those other sites where it feels like you're filling out limitless applications. No, LinkedIn is the best place to post your job because it's where it's going to get the most eyes, and you can post your job easily and for free. So you just post your job, you add the hashtag hiring frame, it's just a setting you can add to your profile so people see your company's hiring. There's simple screening questions so you get the people you're looking to interview quickly. So bring them in, ones that are focused on your type of position that you're offering. And you want to finish the year strong. You want to bring in the right people. Jump into LinkedIn Jobs to get it done easily and for free. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonmlb. That's linkedin.com/lockedonmlb to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Let's jump into game 2 of the Philadelphia Phillies series with the Chicago Cubs. The Phillies have played the Cubs 4 times so far this year. They've lost all 4 of them. You remember the sweep coming out of the All-Star break against the Chicago Cubs that had everyone worried, oh, what in the world is going on with the Philadelphia Phillies? Well, they've now lost 4 in a row to the Chicago Cubs, and that streak ends tonight. I'm going to tell you right now, the Philadelphia Phillies win tonight, and they win big. I predicted it, if you remember, the CT lock when that Zach Wheeler game on Dollar Dog Night where the Philadelphia Phillies ended up walking it off and Matt Vierling had 5 hits, went 5 for 5. Yeah, I called that one, and I didn't feel good about it in about the 7th inning. But, hey, it worked out. I'm not giving this one the CT lock. This is just something that I'm feeling. I think the Philadelphia Phillies win tonight against the Chicago Cubs, and I think they win by 4 runs or more. I think it's a rout of the Cubs tonight. I've already got plans for the second half of the game to do a little something that I'll tell you about in the final segment. But I just feel that confident that this game is going the Philadelphia Phillies way because they're not going to lose to a team like the Chicago Cubs the first 5 times they play them. I know there's a month and a half, 2 months split in between now and the last time they played them. You don't lose season series getting swept by these teams. You might get swept in a series, but ultimately you're going to take 1 or 2. Tonight is that game. Let's talk through the pitching matchup. Aaron Nola goes for the Philadelphia Phillies, who has been the Phillies' best pitcher over the past month and a half, 2 months, especially with Zach Wheeler missing time. Nola's 10-12 with a 3.28 ERA, a 9.9 whip. He's sub 1 now, a 192.1, so 192 and a third innings count on the year with only 161 hits given up, only 29 walks, which is impressive, 18 home runs given up, impressive, 218 strikeouts. That's outstanding. We know how good Aaron Nola is. He's on the mound for another September start. I'm not worried about September Nola because the Cubs flat out are not that good offensively. He should dominate this lineup. And who does he face? Hayden Wesneski, who doesn't have a picture on the ESPN website, who only has a 2-1 record this year. Now, he's got a 2.45 ERA. He's got a 0.82 whip in 22 innings pitched, though. It's not exactly like he's had an incredible amount of innings. He's given up 14 hits. He struck out 24 in those 22 innings. So he has some strikeout capability from the right side. He's only walked 4. He has given up 3 home runs in 22 innings. But let's just look at what those starts were. So he's had a couple of other appearances this year that weren't starts. Here's his 2 starts. He went 6 1/3 innings in a 3-2 win against the Pittsburgh Pirates on Thursday, September 22nd. And then on Saturday, September 17th, he had gone 7 innings and only allowed 1 run in a 3-1 loss to the Colorado Rockies. The Colorado Rockies and the Pittsburgh Pirates are not the Philadelphia Phillies. So, yeah, the stats might look good in his minimal time. He also pitched 3 2/3 innings against the San Francisco Giants, and he pitched 5 innings against the Cincinnati Reds. He gave up 3 runs against the Giants, which is the best team he would have played. He shut out the Reds in 5 innings. But all those teams stink. Even the Giants pretty much stink. And he gave up 3 runs, all 3 earned, and 2 home runs in that game against the San Francisco Giants back on Sunday, September 11th, the week 1 of the NFL season. Just for time frame reference, if that's how you're thinking about time these days. So yeah, are the stats good for Wesneski? They look good, but you see who he's faced. I wouldn't be too worried about him. I think the Phillies get to him. I think they take advantage of a very young pitcher there in Wesneski, and I think they end up winning this game really, really dominantly. I don't think we're worried at all about tonight's game from like the 4th inning on. He's only a 24-year-old. He's new to the MLB. Career numbers. What even does he have career? Yeah, this has been his debut season. So he's still a very, very new rookie. If the Philadelphia Phillies can't handle Hayden Wesneski, we got bigger issues than even I thought. So I've got the Phillies taking home the win tonight. ESPN Analytics matchup predictor says the Phillies have a 59.6% chance to win, as opposed to the Cubs' 40.4% chance. I think that should be even a little bit higher if you ask me. And yeah, I just feel really good about this game. The Phillies are 2-3 in their last 5. The Cubs are 4-1 in their last 5, but 4 of those games were against the Pittsburgh Pirates. I just think they're due to start cooling off again because they're not playing for anything. And while that means no pressure, it also means no motivation at points, especially when a team gets up on you early. So that's how I feel about tonight's game between the Philadelphia Phillies and the Chicago Cubs. And we'll be keeping an eye on other games tonight. The Philadelphia Phillies are in the 3rd wild card spot. They're 2.5 games back on San Diego. Call it 2 even because the Phillies have the tiebreaker between them and the Padres. They are also up 1.5 games on the Milwaukee Brewers. Call it 2 even because the Philadelphia Phillies have the tiebreaker over the Milwaukee Brewers. So they're up 2 in the loss column over Milwaukee. They're down 2 in the loss column to San Diego. But again, you can kill those half games because of the tiebreaker that the Phillies hold. Milwaukee losing last night to the Arizona Cardinals. So that was great for the Philadelphia Phillies. A really good sign for them about how their opponent who's trying to chase them down for the wild card spot is doing. Now, we're not too worried about the San Diego Padres. I'm not really looking at the San Diego Padres as a team that the Philadelphia Phillies have to chase down. I've said before, I think the 3rd wildcard spot is honestly the more beneficial one because you don't have to play the 2nd place team in the NL East. You would play the winner of the NL Central, which is the St. Louis Cardinals. They've got that all locked up. The Milwaukee Brewers are really the only team that you're facing that you have to worry. Not facing, but that are chasing you that you're worried about. And they've got another game against the St. Louis Cardinals tonight. They got another game. Or no, it's just a 2-game set against the St. Louis Cardinals. But they'll play the Cardinals again tonight. And this is a little bit of a check-in, quasi-locked-on Cardinals. Jose Quintana takes the mound for the St. Louis Cardinals against Brandon Woodruff. And we know how good Brandon Woodruff is. He's incredible. He's got 3.18 ERA, over 141 in the 3rd innings pitched, 173 Ks. Woodruff going for Milwaukee is a little bit troubling. Hopefully the Cardinals will beat him. The Cardinals are a 90-win team, but yeah, the Phillies are going to have to win tonight if they're going to hold everything together. Their magic number is at 7, them being the Phillies, that is. The Brewers will have to make up that deficit, which still, things look to be in the Phillies' favor. Tonight would be a big one to win because it looks like the Brewers have a great opportunity to win against the St. Louis Cardinals. So, hey, take care of business yourself, Phillies. No more waiting around for the Brewers to collapse, even though they did lose last night and gave you a little bit of a buffer for losing to the Cubs 2-1. Now, go win tonight. That's what you absolutely have to do. Now, coming up next as we wrap up, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about playoff scenarios and what to expect for the Philadelphia Phillies if they do get in. I'm done saying when they get in because they got to prove to me that they can win games down the stretch here. But if they get in, we're going to take a quick look at the percentage chances, how things look like they're going to stack up, and with some divisional teams, we'll tell you how the playoff race is settled already for teams that are already in because we haven't recapped that yet. And a lot of teams have recently gotten in. So I want to do that as well. We'll discuss that next as we wrap up Locked On Phillies. Let's jump into the teams that are clinched into the playoffs to know who the Phillies do and don't have to worry about the rest of the way. And we'll talk about the most likely teams to make it in that are not currently in, because there are still projections for chances to win the division, chances to make the postseason, things like that. Starting with the American League East, the New York Yankees, they're clinched, they're in, they won the American League East, so they're set. 100% chance to win the division, 100% chance in the postseason. The Toronto Blue Jays have not yet clinched the top wild card in the American League. They're very close. Looks like they're basically a lock to make the playoffs. They should be good. And the Tampa Bay Rays, I keep wanting to say Devil Rays all of a sudden. I don't know why. Tampa Bay Rays look like they're going to get in as well. The AL East looking like they'll have 3 teams in the race. Baltimore Orioles on the outside looking in. They'd have to make up a 5-game deficit over their last 9 games. That nearly impossible for them to do. The Cleveland Guardians have already clinched the AL Central. They've got that locked up. Division is theirs. The White Sox don't look like they're going to make it in. They're lower than the Orioles. Twins done. Royals done. Detroit Tigers done. Here's something interesting for the Philadelphia Phillies to keep an eye on. And remember, so the Yankees have 95 wins. The Houston Astros, not only have they clinched the AL West, they have 102 wins. They've basically clinched. I don't know if they've totally clinched the top seed in the American League, but they're going to have clinched it by the time the Philadelphia Phillies see them for the final series of the year. That means they could be resting a bunch of people, which could significantly help the Philadelphia Phillies if they don't play the top Houston Astros team and one of the best teams in baseball, the best team in the American League. That would be very helpful. It looks like it's playing that way for the Phillies. The Seattle Mariners, they're an 83-win team. They have a 99.8% chance to go into the postseason as the final wildcard team in the American League. Now in the National League, the Mets have clinched a playoff berth. They have not yet clinched the division. The Atlanta Braves have clinched a playoff berth as well. They have also not yet clinched a division. So how is that going to work? 97 wins for both of those teams, 58 losses for both of those teams, no games back, nothing, a dead heat. It's 100% chance for both of them to make the playoffs, obviously. But man, that division still very much in question in the NL East, and the Phillies are very, very familiar with that. The Phillies, this will be fun to look at. They have a 78.9% chance to make the postseason, according to these projections that I'm seeing on MLB.com. Now, they're an 83-win team. We know where they're at in the standings. They're still in the 3rd wild card spot. The St. Louis Cardinals have already won the NL Central. They clinched recently. They're 90-65. They're over the Brewers. Now, they've still got to play the Brewers, and they're still playing to figure out playoff seeding. They're not going to catch either of the teams actually in the American or in the NL East or the NL West. So you kind of have to worry about the Cardinals taking their foot off the gas against the Brewers tonight. The Brewers a lot more to play for. That's a worrying spot, and that's why I say that the Philadelphia Phillies have to take care of their own business from here on out, at least for the rest of this Cubs series. And then, well, the Nationals, you should take care of it anyway. But the Milwaukee Brewers facing off against the Cardinals for the final time this year tonight. It'd be tough to see the Cardinals winning that game. Take care of your business in Chicago. The Dodgers have already clinched the NL West. The San Diego Padres have a 98.5% chance to make it in via the wild card. They're sitting in the 2nd wild card spot right now. The Phillies still realistically could catch them, but hey, the Phils are just trying to make it in. But that's where you're standing, and then everyone else in the NL West is gone. Everyone else in the NL Central is gone. The Cubs have long been eliminated, who the Phillies are playing now, as have the Cincinnati Reds, Pittsburgh Pirates, and you're looking at Arizona and Colorado out in the West. So that's how the standings are. That's who's in. That's what we're looking at. Every division in baseball wrapped up besides the NL East, and it's a wild division this year, including the Phillies wild card push. So, hey, a lot of stuff. The ball's still in the Phillies' court. They control their own destiny. Take care of business the rest of the way. But the margin for error is getting tighter as we come down the home stretch. And tonight's game, hey, treat it like a playoff game. Same with the 4 in Washington. Same with the last one in Chicago first. And then same with the 4 in Washington and the 3 in Houston. It's going to be heck of a home stretch. And we'll be with you the whole way. Not the home way, the whole way here on Locked On Phillies. I want to thank you for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Now, check out Locked On MLB for your second listen. Paul Francis Sullivan Sully, he's great. We're going to be doing a crossover later this week that you're going to be able to hear, that I'll be recording actually later tonight after the Phillies game. So we'll discuss that. And you'll hear from Paul Francis Sullivan, who covers MLB in general for Locked On. So he does a great job on the Locked On MLB podcast. You can find it on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Check that all out next and check out our next episode tomorrow. But that's all for today's Locked On Phillies.